Hello, and welcome to another episode of Critical Weight Theory. So, today I'm going to be talking about a man who has worn many hats: a physicist, biochemist, educator, artist, film scholar, and fingerstyle guitarist. His name is Harry Arthur Taussig. Born March 31st, 1941, in Los Angeles, Taussig is the kind of quiet genius who disappears into his work, only to reemerge decades later with something so unexpected it changes the way we see him all over again. And he's a scholar and an artist, which is really a neat combo. Taussig studied physics at UC Berkeley in the early 1960s, a time when science, music, and counterculture were colliding in fascinating ways. He didn't just stick to physics, he dipped into anthropology, explored music history, and cultivated a curiosity that never really shut off. After a brief stint working in defense technology, Taussig turned to biochemistry and biophysics. By 1971, he had earned a PhD studying nucleic acids with a focus on circular dichroism. Now, I don't know what all that means, but it's a scientist, uh, for sure. And his curiosity didn't stop at the lab. Under the name H. Arthur Taussig, he taught film studies and wrote about cinema, most notably his 1997 book, Film Values, Family Values: A Parent's Guide. As a visual artist, his illuminated books and Jungian collages found their way into some of the most prestigious art institutions in America: the Met, and the Art Institute of Chicago, and others. In 1982, he received a National Endowment for the Arts Visual Artist Grant, in acknowledgement of his ability to create works that challenged and captivated audiences. So, if you look at all of it together, there's science, art, film, writing, and they weren't entirely separate pursuits. They were different expressions of the same restless, searching mind, and I'm sure they all fed into each other to some degree. And he was also a quiet musical genius. Back in the 1960s, if you rewind back to that time period, in 1965, Taussig walked into a studio and recorded an entire guitar album titled Fate is Only Once in a single 45-minute take. No edits, no retakes. He later reflected on what he was trying to do. He had grown up surrounded by European classical music at home, while at college he soaked up American folk. Instead of choosing one path, he fused them, borrowing the structural surprises of classical composers like Bach and Schoenberg and layering them into American fingerstyle guitar. The result was music that constantly plays with the listener, inviting you to expect one thing, then taking you somewhere else entirely. Though Fate is Only Once was full of mistakes, it became a cult classic among fingerstyle fans who appreciate its rawness, and it is sometimes called a classic album among primitive folk music. And he followed it with two contributions to contemporary guitar, Spring 67, alongside names like John Fahey and Robbie Basho. And then he vanished from the music scene. For decades, Taussig poured himself into teaching, science, and visual art instead. So you have to go and fast forward nearly 40 years for his rediscovery and return. In 2006, Fate is Only Once was reissued, sparking a wave of renewed interest. By 2012, Taussig was back, this time with Fate is Only Twice, recorded at home with modern tools. He didn't stop there, though. Albums followed in quick succession. The Diamond of Lost Alphabets in 2014, Too Late to Die Young in 2016, and even a remix project with an artist called Kid Millions. Then came a milestone that nobody expected. In 2013, at age 71, Taussig performed live in front of an audience for the very first time. Not in some small venue, but at South by Southwest, which is obviously a very large concert. And Wired magazine even listed it among the top 50 performances of the festival. That same year, reflecting on the legendary guitarist Elizabeth Cotten, Taussig said, "It struck me that what she was doing in principle was very similar to the complexity that Mozart was doing." End quote. And that was, a little bit of a glimpse into his style of analysis. He didn't care as much about genres as some people do. He just respected the creative abilities of the musicians that that he respected, And in 2017, Tompkins Square paired him with fellow Tacoma guitarist Max Oakes for an album and live appearances. And on his 82nd birthday in 2023, he released 80, a solo guitar album that seamlessly blends classical structure with folk and blues roots. And by the way, his birthday is on March 31st, just so you know. So look at the bigger picture here. Taussig's life, taken as a whole, you see a polymath in the truest sense. In science, a PhD in biophysics with research into nucleic acids. In academia, a respected educator and author. In art, the visual arts that is, collages and illuminated works that earned national recognition. In music, an early innovator in fingerstyle guitar, or what is called again primitive folk music, who returned decades later with a catalog that now spans generations. So he's not just a guitarist, not just a physicist, not just an artist. He's someone who spent his entire life moving between worlds, finding hidden connections, and surprising us with brilliance from unexpected corners. As Leonardo da Vinci once said, learning never exhausts the mind. Harry Arthur Taussig is living proof. I kind of struggled with the name there because I was trying to apparently merge the names together. But anyway, that's it for today's episode. If you want to explore Taussig's music, you can find reissues of his early recordings and his later albums on Tompkins Square Records, or probably on YouTube and places like that. If you're curious about his art, his collages and illuminated works are still shown in major museums and galleries. And thanks for listening.